Well, a good Friday evening, everyone. It is Friday. That means time for a WebExtra where I talk about the longer range weather patterns or sometimes the weather coming up for the next week. I thought I would talk about the long range this time around and how we are switching around to a colder pattern for a bit. Now, I don't think it's going to be extremely cold, and there's going to be a lot of fighting back and forth. But it's going to be back to a near to slightly below average pattern. You know, one of the signs here is the GFS. This is, I want to show you some warming at the stratosphere up near the Arctic. When you get the polar vortex right here, offset, that kind of sets the stage down the road for us to have a blast of cold into North America and definitely have a warming event. And there's another strengthening of the warming here coming up next week into about Groundhog Day. So I do think there's a couple of shots of cold air coming our way. I'll move it forward down the road, and I wanted to show you how then the polar vortex is trying to eke its way back over the pole, and that usually means that we're going to end up in a pattern that'll warm up. So my gut feeling, you have it right here. My gut feeling is that we are going to be cold for the first half of February, or at least fighting on the cold side and then getting to the warm side after that. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the upper air maps. This is the 500 millibar. This is the GFS. I always talk about it, ridge in the west. Cold air moves into the east. The sharper the ridge, the more polar air or Arctic air that comes down into the United States. So we still have that pattern here. Next week that we do have a trough swinging on through, so the cold air gets reinforced. It kind of retreats a bit on Tuesday. The heights come down a little bit in Western Canada, and I do think that we're going to get into this pattern where we'll have these clipper systems, a little bit of snow, warm up, then cold again. So we're going to have this little fight going on right here. We're just on the cusp between some mild air building in the southern United States and that cold air just to our north. But we still have that ridge up over northwestern Canada. So there's still going to be some cold air filtering into Canada, and there's going to be a fight. It's just exactly where we're going to be in the fight all the time is something we'll have to watch. Now, down the road, the GFS trying to bring the heights down in the western United States, so we may start to see the heights come up a little bit briefly, and you're seeing some reflection before another trough starts to build on in by the 6th of February. But with these heights coming down, what I think is going to happen in this case is that trough swings through and lifts on out. And we may, again, I'm hinting that second half of February I can see on the warmer side. Let's go ahead and take a look at the European heights. Same thing, ridge in the west, trough in the east, cold weather. When you see these, again, these purplish to green colors, the 500 millibar heights, colder than average, signifies a pretty good trough, pretty good ridge here. And again, when you get that ridge poking up, it sends that cold air into the eastern United States. So we have a little retreat on Tuesday also on the European. And again, we're in this battle zone, though the European kind of breaks it down a little bit, kind of breaks apart the ridge a little bit, tries to swing a system into the western United States. So European not quite as cold. And if you look at this, we get more of a zonal flow. This may be an unsettled weather pattern, but the European says, okay, maybe not as cold for the United States, hinting a little bit at day 10. So, little mixed signal. That's why I'm calling for temperatures to be near to below average for at least the first week to 10 days during the month of February. Let's look down the road, the MJO index. And let's start off with the NCEP, which is based off of the GFS ensemble. There are certain phases on the MJO which favor colder weather. We did swing through 1 and 2, favor colder weather, but no strong signal on the GFS. As trying to hint to 6 and 7, which would be a little bit warmer, but no strong signal there. Want to show you the European. There is some argument between the models. And you see the European, you know, has a weak signal, but then tries to take us in 5, 6, and into 7. That's a warm signal for down the road. So that's something, you know, we're talking about, we're getting into, you know, second week of February here. And that's where I'm thinking the pattern will change a little bit. Let's take a look at other indices. This is the North Atlantic Oscillation. When it's positive, usually tends to be a little bit milder in the east. Systems tend to move off quickly, and I do think we move off quickly. NAO is kind of a weird correlation, I will tell you that. But it does tell me that we still can have these clipper systems moving through. I'm not saying, it's going to be chilly at times, and we're going to have these fights with some snow, maybe a mix. The PNA, this is the Pacific North America oscillation. When it is positive, there's a ridge in the west, a trough in the east. Now, obviously, we've been positive, and we've had the cold weather. It's still it's trying to bring it back toward neutral, a little positive. So that's a little colder sign into the beginning of February. Arctic oscillation, staying positive, which, if you really want to see some real cold area and you want to see this tanking a bit. So I do think down the road, there is a potential for us to get to a point, we're going to be in a cold weather pattern for a little bit. I'm pretty confident that overall between now and at least the 10th of February, 7th to 10th of February, for the most part, we're near to below average. After that, I could see how we warm up a little bit. And if you remember my winter cast, and maybe I'm a little biased, I thought we'd pop out of spring toward the end of February, pop into more of a spring-like pattern into the end of February. So we'll have to see how that works out. Have yourself a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next week.